In ABA, the verbal operants are functional units of language that help us understand how language develops and functions in different contexts. They represent the different ways that people use language. There are 6 main verbal operants: mands, tacts, echoics, intraverbals, textual behavior, and transcription. Identify the verbal operant by the antecedent, or the SD, and the consequence, or the reinforcer, of the verbal behavior. Let me show you what I mean. A mand is a request for an item, activity, or social interaction. The SD is the motivation for the specific stimulus being requested, and the consequence is receiving that stimulus. This is the only verbal operant where the reinforcer is directly tied to the SD. Let's look at an example. Morgan's mother just came home from a business trip. She walks in holding a giant teddy bear. Morgan is excited to see her mom, but she really wants the bear. Morgan says, "Can I have the bear?" Her mother hands her the bear. This is a mand. Morgan wants the bear, and she requests the bear. She receives the bear, which makes her more likely to repeat this behavior in the future. That's reinforcement. The bear does not need to be present for Morgan's question to be a mand. Morgan also does not need to use a full sentence for this to be a mand. Morgan could say just bear, and it would still be a mand if she wanted the bear and the reinforcer for the word was receiving the bear. Mands can also be non-vocal. Pointing, sign language, PECS, or using an AAC device are all ways to mand for something. Identifying the verbal operant is about understanding the antecedents, or the SD, and the consequence, or what reinforces the behavior. Teaching mands requires understanding what the learner is motivated for, identifying how the learner best communicates, creating opportunities, prompting the communication, and providing reinforcement. Here are some ideas for building motivation and creating opportunities. Place items in sight but out of reach or in containers. Make old toys new and interesting by playing with them in new and exciting or interesting ways. For example, a folding table or slide can be used as a giant ramp for a car. If the learner likes cars, this will increase her motivation to ask for the car. Introduce activities that the learner can't do on her own or that require you to perform an action again and again, such as blowing bubbles. Give the learner only a part of what she needs to complete an activity. When giving her toys with multiple parts or edibles, give her only a few pieces at a time to create multiple opportunities to mand. Ask questions about attributes such as, what color block, or do you want the big cookie or the little cookie? Now let's look at a different verbal operant, the tact. A tact is essentially labeling something the learner experiences with his 5 senses, including seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and feeling. The SD is what the learner experiences in the environment, and the reinforcer is not directly related to the SD. Let's look at an example. Jenny sees a dog, points and says, "Dog." Although Jenny sees the dog, she does not want the dog. Tacting is an important part of joint attention. Jenny does not need to point for this to be a tact. She could also use sign language or an AAC device to communicate. Jenny can tact anything she experiences with her 5 senses, including something she smells, tastes, feels, or hears. Teaching tacts requires exploring different sensory stimuli available in the environment, identifying how the learner best communicates, creating opportunities, prompting the communication, and providing reinforcement. Tacting opens the door to social communication and can be part of joint attention. During unstructured activities and play, incorporate some of the learner's favorite objects in new or unique ways. When the learner is surprised by something in the environment, he is more likely to engage in spontaneous tacts. Here are some examples. Putting the iPad in the hands of a teddy bear. Use this as an opportunity to tact bear or iPad. As the learner develops more advanced tacting skills, encourage longer utterances such as bear has iPad. Putting the learner's shoe on your toes when they are significantly too small for you. The learner could tact shoe or foot. Spontaneously play rooster sounds when the learner is playing. Pretend you're as surprised as the learner and cup your hand behind your ear to encourage the communication. Intraverbal behavior is the most complex of the verbal operants and includes conversations, answering questions, and completing phrases or sentences initiated by others. The SD for an intraverbal is someone else's verbal behavior, and the reinforcer is something other than the SD. As with MANs and Tacts, an intraverbal does not need to be spoken language. A learner can use sign language, PECS, or an AAC device to engage in intraverbal behavior. Here's an example. James is singing a song with Charlie. As he sings, he pauses to give Charlie an opportunity to complete the sentence. James sings, "If you're happy and you know it, stomp your," and waits for Charlie to say feet before continuing on with the song. If Charlie needs some help, James points to Charlie's feet and/or models stomping his feet. This prompt is faded to help Charlie respond independently. As Charlie develops more complex language, James works to teach him to respond to simple questions like, "What does Spider-Man shoot from his hands?" Teaching intraverbals includes choosing different types of intraverbals, identifying how the learner best communicates, creating opportunities within some of the learner's favorite activities, prompting the communication, and providing reinforcement. Begin by teaching the learner to respond to simple fill-ins that are familiar or meaningful to him, then gradually build to more complex skills. Intraverbals are the key to complex communication with others. Here are some examples. Sing the learner's favorite song and pause at his favorite part and wait for him to complete the phrase. Play with animal sounds while playing with toy farm animals. Say, "Moo," says the, and wait for the learner to tack the cow in your hand. Gradually eliminate the cow as a prompt. Ask simple questions about things that are important to the learner. Incorporate topics that are of special interest to the learner. Build skills gradually, providing visuals or verbal prompts using the verbal operants that are strongest for the learner and that can be faded over time, such as tacts, echoics, or textual behavior. Echoic behavior refers to repeating or imitating what another person says. This verbal operant helps individuals learn language by mimicking the speech of others. Like intraverbals, the antecedent is someone else's verbal behavior, and the reinforcer is something unrelated to the SD. The difference between an intraverbal and an echoic is that the echoic is the same as the SD. Unlike the verbal operants, echoics must be spoken language. This is the only verbal operant that requires that the learner speak. Take a look at this example. Sarah is playing with Samuel, who loves to blow bubbles. While playing, Sarah says, "Bubbles," and Samuel says "bubbles" right after. Sarah tickles Samuel, who giggles. Note how the reinforcer for this is not Sarah blowing bubbles, but something different from the SD. If Sarah blew bubbles to reinforce Samuel saying "bubbles," and Samuel wanted the bubbles, this would be a prompted mand. Also, Sarah doesn't have bubbles. If she did, it would be a prompted tact. Echoics are simply repeating a word, sound, or phrase emitted by another person. Teaching intraverbals includes choosing different sounds that are already in the learner's repertoire or that have meaning to him, creating opportunities within different activities or when the learner's attention can be focused on you, and providing reinforcement for approximations. Because you can't physically prompt the learner to make the sounds you want him to make, shaping is your greatest chance to help the learner make the sounds you want him to make. When teaching echoics, use targets that include sounds the learner emits on his own or that are related to things he enjoys. Encourage vocal imitation and any vocal play throughout the day. Imitate the learner's vocal sounds if the learner enjoys that. Here are some examples. While tickling the learner, imitate the sounds he makes most often. When handing him his favorite objects, say the word and enunciate some of the sounds. Pause and wait for the learner to imitate you. Throughout the session, play with some of the sounds the learner makes most often. Pause and wait for him to make the sounds and provide reinforcement. Some learners are more motivated when the sounds you want them to imitate are words that have meaning or value to them. Reinforce making any speech sounds and approximations to the sounds you want them to make. Gradually shape the sounds into words. Textual behavior involves reading written words out loud. It's the ability to vocalize written language accurately. This could be a single word or a full text. When you read a book aloud, you are engaging in textual behavior. Here's an example. Zane is sitting in his classroom with a book, Hop on Pop. Zane says, "Hop on Pop." His teacher says from the front of the room, "That's right, Zane." The learner can act as his own listener if there is not another person around. Textual behavior does not necessarily require another person be present. The learner can read for his own enjoyment or as part of an assignment without someone else being with him. Typically, textual behavior is taught in schools and is not part of insurance-funded ABA programs. If you're working in a school, you might be required to help the learner develop this verbal operant. Teaching textual behavior includes teaching sight words and letter sounds, creating opportunities within different activities for the learner to practice textual behavior, prompting the textual behavior, and providing reinforcement for gradually more independent responding. Here are some examples. Make reading fun and physical by creating a scavenger hunt around the room. Leave clues in the form of simple words for the learner to read to find the next clue. For example, the words rug, dog, map, and car can lead the learner to find the next clue. Leave a surprise by the final clue. Find books about the learner's favorite topic or characters. Read most of the words, encouraging the learner to read the words he's currently learning. Find words in the environment and encourage the learner to read them. Reading can be frustrating for many learners. Make it fun and avoid pressuring the learner. You have reached the last of the basic verbal operants, transcription. Transcription is writing or typing words that are spoken aloud. It is the written form of vocal language. When you write down a spoken sentence, you are engaging in transcription. Here's an example. Emmett is asked by his teacher, Becca, to go to the whiteboard and write the word cat. Emmett writes the word cat. This is transcription. Transcription can also be copying words that are already written. For example, if Emmett's teacher asked him to copy the word on the whiteboard and he wrote the word cat after seeing the word cat. Teaching transcription includes choosing words that have meaning to the learner, creating opportunities within different activities or when the transcription would be meaningful to the learner, prompting the behavior, and providing reinforcement for gradually more independent responses. Transcription serves many purposes, including practicing handwriting, making to-do lists, or copying instructions. Here are some examples. Make activities meaningful for the learner. If the learner is expected to practice writing, provide a list of words that are meaningful to the learner. Incorporate his favorite topics. Incorporate transcription into other activities. Have the learner make a shopping list for materials needed to complete a preferred art project, or have the learner keep score during a preferred card game. Find ways to make the task of transcription valuable and motivating to the learner. Avoid simply presenting him with a rote task and random reinforcement.